was hell. For someone who survived the torture that this war has brought, I could tell you that everything you see in films, and the stories of days past, they never talk about the horrors that those who aren't involved in the fight have to go through. My name is Roman, and I'm here to tell you a tale about how me and a couple other survivors somehow found a way to survive this hellish landscape. But the story does not start with me. It starts with 3 others who started their own fight for survival. Marin, a handyman, a man who made things for a living. He was working in the workshop the day the fighting went down. Poor man lost everything in that fire that burnt down his workshop. Arika, that poor girl, she was trying to escape when she came to the capital. Her entire hometown was wiped out, and she gets to the capital, hoping for safety, only to find this. She was surprisingly able to keep within the shadows and quiet while moving around. It always made me wonder what she did before all this. And Katya, she came to cover the war breakout. Well, she got her experience alright, and had to live with the other 2 to try to make do with the horrors that they would have to face on a daily basis. Worse yet, the war broke out in the winter. With homes destroyed and nowhere to go, the 3 settled in a ruined building to make a home, hoping to survive the devastation that was this war. When the war had broken out, there was mass chaos. People dying, homes destroyed, snipers knocking people down left and right. They didn't care who it was. If you were in their sight lines, you were going to get shot. The 3 started by scavenging the home for tools. They got lucky. The building they sought shelter in had a heater, which was important in the dead of winter. They scavenged things together, hoping to make what they could. Maureen made a bed, while the others scavenged for supplies. They found a tiny bit of fuel, and a tiny bit of food, which were useful to start off with. Maureen, being a handyman, was able to create some things for them to use early on. I have to admit, the man was a genius. He was able to put a stove together with practically scrap. Cooked meat was rare during that time, and was critical for making it through the days. If you had no good food, you were going to die a slow and miserable death. The first night, Katya was chosen to go out and gather supplies. Everyone knew that without a lot of resources, they'd never get through the coming days. Katya said that on her first night, she had found a baby carriage.
I remember that vividly. A smiling red crab with marks of a toddler gnawing at it. A rattle. That half bottle of baby formula that had gone rotten. They had a horrible stench. They had left it in a hurry, leaving all this behind. I wondered if it's because they got out, or if they didn't need it anymore. It may have been reporter, but nothing prepared me for this.
However, luck shined down upon her. In the rush of those who tried to escape that building, the old inhabitants of the home left a bunch of food. It was a reasonable start. They would be able to survive a week on that food. The coming days were filled with trials and tribulations. They made a shovel with the parts lying around, allowing them to easily get to more parts of the house. But that night, the second night they were there, Katya went to the supermarket. She figured she would find more food there, but what she did find was a situation. A soldier and a girl. That poor girl. He strong-armed her. He made it clear that he had a place for her to stay, and that she'd come along. Katya didn't know what to do. If she intervened, she might have put herself and the rest of her crew in danger. So she ran. In the end, it was right for the group, but it was not right for the girl. It haunts Katya, even to this day. It was clear she wasn't happy. Maureen started to show signs of a cough. He tried to rest it off, but they'd find out later that he wasn't able to. But the 5th day, they didn't realize what would happen that day. Maureen was getting slightly better. He was hard at work. He made a goddamn radio. A radio. Arika was asleep and really tired. Katya was attempting to get water to cook the food. Everyone was tired and exhausted, but none of them kept track of one vital thing: the amount of fuel in their heater. Katya had gone out to get more supplies, And well, I remember she had once told me about the story that happened afterward.
I came back, and at the door, Erica was crying. I asked what was wrong. She said that it was all her fault. She was so scared from the attacks the night before, and that they had attacked again. I asked what had happened again. She said that she was so worried that she ignored how cold she was, that she forgot about the heater. And I asked where Marin was. All she did was stare at me. I went down to the bed, and that's where he laid, lifeless. He had frozen to death. In his sickly state, he wasn't able to get up and put any more to the heater. I dropped to my knees and just stood there for a while. Our friend was gone, and it was our fault.
Those days were long for those two. Both of them were inconsolable for a period of time. They worked, but they couldn't speak. They felt so much guilt. Who could blame them, though? Katya was getting necessary supplies. Erika had fought off attackers. Circumstances were hell. And what was worse was that Erika was now sick, and there was barely anything they could use for meds. Those looters, they were vicious. They came back again on the 6th night. Erika fought them off once again. She got wounded that 6th night, but what was worse was her sickness. It was killing her slowly. That day they made it a priority to get the holes in the house patched up. That would help them against the attackers. That would give them time to rest. But Katya was a mess. Her friends were falling left and right. She was so exhausted. From what she told me, she had almost given up at that point. That night they didn't even go out. Katya stood guard while Erika tried to recover. But that, to my friends, was where I entered the picture. For on that 8th day, I ran across the abandoned house that they had tried to hold up in. I had run from the war. I was a soldier. I was looking for something, anything, and I found what would be my salvation in that house. Things were up and down over the next few days I was there. Neighbors came around and said a supply drop of humanitarian aid was dropped. Despite her depression, Katya went out and got some things. Those silly foreigners. Why they thought we needed coffee beans, I have no idea. During that time, Erika was bedridden the entire time. It was painful to watch. I barely knew her, but from what Katya said, she was a strong and relentless person. I felt sorry for her. She could barely move. On the 10th day, the trader came back, and he had medicine. But medicine was a hot commodity. Not many people had it. It would take a lot of supplies to get it, but we did get it. We gave up our shovel to him. I hoped at the time we would never need it again, but the meds, they were far more important. Katya went to the school that night. She had heard noises, and while she was frightened at first, I'll give the girl credit. She's got unbelievable bravery. Luckily, they were only rats, but if it were me, I might have chosen to back off and run. However, Erika was not fighting off the illness well enough, though. Despite the medicine we had given to her over the days that I had first arrived, we had run out of medicine to give her on the 11th day. While I took my time to make another bed, the poor girl Erika was basically taking up the other one. I sat back in horror and let my mind think about things that I should never have thought about. I wondered if it was better if Erika passed on, as it seemed that the end result was going to be her death no matter what. I felt so inhuman by feeling that, but I also didn't want a situation where meds went to her instead of myself. Katya, in the meanwhile, made a rainwater collector. The winter had finally passed, and so we needed a source for making water again. On the 12th day, I decided that we needed a way to make meds. If we could, I put together a herbal workshop. I knew we would need to get some distilled alcohol to be effective. However, it was a gamble. I hoped we could get what we needed to make the items for bandages and meds. And by talking around those in the city, SIGs were a wonderful trading tool. On that day, I talked to Katya. She was in a horrible state. She was still distraught with guilt about Maureen and Erika, blaming herself over and over again. I needed her to stay positive. I knew I could not survive on my own, with only me and Erika. I don't know if it helped. I want to think it did. That night, Katya ran into homeless that were holding out in the school. They did have supplies we could use, but we could not take the resources that they had gathered from them. They were in the same situation that we were. I hated that she came back that night, because while she was scavenging, Erika took a turn for the worst. I did all I could, I really did. Katya had gotten medicine. She had found it, but it was too late. She didn't take it well. The only solution I had, the only one I could think of, was to drink our problems away. I was not as bad as her, but in the end, I was sad too. She downed that alcohol faster than I could have ever imagined. She wanted the pain to go away. I couldn't blame her. I wanted it gone too. Erika, wherever you are, heaven, the next life, wherever there is, I hope you are happy. You deserved better. Neither of us had the strength to go out that night, and unfortunately, I was starting to become sick. I was glad that Katya had gotten medicine, but that was intended for Erika. I just had initial problems taking it. I felt so guilty, but I knew I had to. But one thing was apparent. We were in trouble. Those raiders were still around. One person always had to stay on guard. And if that was the case and we wanted to salvage, that meant no sleep. We had to sleep, but when? Katya was exhausted too, so she hadn't slept in a long time. And even worse, Zora's timing. Zora, a neighbor of ours, had been living with her family. Her daughter. She came to our door panicked that 14th day. Apparently her husbands were taken by the rebels in the first year of the war. They needed her barricading the windows to protect themselves. I sat there wondering what I could do. We were so hurt. We had so many problems of our own. It would be foolish for me to help them. When we had so many problems, I sat there in contemplation, wondering what to do. In the end, I couldn't let her go back by herself. Katya understood, and despite her exhaustion, was willing to guard our house that night. Thank God we weren't attacked. And luckily, on that 15th day, the final member of our crew showed up. Boris, big tough Russian dude. We needed all the help we could get, and this guy looked like he could carry anything. His home was in ruins while he had helped others, and now he was looking for a place to stay. He had a slight cough and looked like he hadn't slept in a while, but he was far better than the rest of us. He helped keep the gears turning, while me and Katya attempted to recover from all we had been through. He had even patched together a helmet that we had found while scavenging to make it useful again. That sniper fire always scared me. The fact that on that day I could just drop dead, not seeing what was coming at me, it still gives me nightmares. Boris went to the church that night. A priest and his flock were still there, looking for salvation. He took things to defend himself. There were rumors of possible attackers. Luckily, he got out just fine, with no issues. It was a relief. But that night, though, man, Katya wouldn't stop crying, wouldn't stop screaming. I can't imagine what she was going through, but I spent the entire night trying to make sure that she was going to be okay, that she was going to get through this. It was a long night, to say the least. The next nights they ran all together. I can't remember many of them from the others. It was a really troubling time for us. Boris attempting to keep us together. Me hoping that the next attack wouldn't kill us. Katya in despair. I admit, I wondered if we were going to get it through in the end. Raiders attacking us every night. Me fighting them off. Katya getting better by the day, hoping though that she didn't sink back into a depression. And Boris, well, he was just Boris. It was a set of hard nights. We spent those nights hungry, sick, sad. We didn't know how we'd get through each next day, but we did our best. Boris would go out for supplies. Katya do everything that she could under the sun, and me standing guard against bandits as best I could. Sometimes I was successful, but sometimes not so much. We had finally gotten our hands on a gun and bullets at that point, and they changed the tide of attacks on us, until they started bringing rifles. Things were getting more and more scarce too. Boris on his runs were running into people who would shoot on sight. Sometimes he could only bring a little bit back. By day 21, things were in trouble. I was angry. I really was. Me and Katya argued while Boris was out scavenging. I said something I shouldn't have. She gave me a left hook. I deserved it. There was no question. But I was surprised how well she could throw a punch. No wonder why she made it that long. She was a fighter. Tensions were high. We tried making a trap to catch rats, hoping to get any meat. Yes, rats. We had run out of food a long time ago. Everyone was sick, hungry, tired. If it wasn't one problem, it was another. Boris making another run, hoping to bring back anything that was useful. Even Katya went back out one night to trade the cigs we had made to get food. She hoped to bring anything of real value. I admit she was able to bargain better than anyone I had ever seen. For those cigs and a crowbar, she got us the food we most desperately needed that time. We had been starving at that point. Man, that food never tasted so good as that day. I savored every last bite. But things were looking bleak. Resources were running out. We had not a lot of places to turn. And then we turned on the radio that one day, after hearing cheering from the outside. A ceasefire. When we had heard that, we couldn't believe it. We jumped and screamed as loud as we could. We were still weak from all we had gone through, but we had done it. We had lived through this godforsaken war. We had lost several people. We had lost several people close to us, but somehow we had survived. Let this be a lesson, friends. War is hell. Don't let anyone else tell you otherwise. But sometimes, through the horrors of it all, you find something to hold on to. Hope. And hope is what got us through. Hey everybody out there, my name is Sean Joy, aka Dragnix, and I'd like to thank TechRaptor for letting me do some content for them. You should go check out TechRaptor.net